You know, Robbie and BJ, kind of two of the more amateur guys in town that tube and worm.
And Jay.
Jay, why don't you come up here? Do you guys do a lot of tube and worming for the bass?
We try not to.
Try not to.
I tried not to for years. And a buddy of mine told me, you're dumb if you don't try to do it locally. And when I first started, I was really good at catching lobster pots, rocks, everything, and I got frustrated with it. I really did. I got super frustrated. Actually, Jay helped me quite a bit when I started. Now, I think Robbie and I kind of made it a little bit more fun with lighter rods. So with the gear, not Robbie and I, so much the gear changing, made it a little bit more fun. So you can actually have fun. You can take the boat out of gear and you can actually, the customers can still have fun. It's not something I want to do all day, but it's I can tell you this, I've drifted through piles and piles and piles of eels, stripers with eels, and they don't even look at it. You put a stupid orange tube on, you go through the middle of it, you double up.
Yeah, and with the lighter rods too, it makes it so much more fun. Like before, you know, if you were using wire and stuff like that, I mean, now we're primarily using lead core, and you're using a 150-gram rod. So like, you know, you catch a 14-pound striper, it's awesome, just as fun as when you hook a 45-pound striper. You know what I mean? But the equipment can handle both in a certain way. You know what I mean? So it's like you still got enough ass in the rod when you do hook a 45-pound striper that you don't get your, you know, owned.
Yeah.
But it makes every fish fun, which is a lot of times the customer is. And the other thing it helped is with those lighter rods and, you know, watching the cadence of the tube. Like I could tell if that thing's got a sea hair of seaweed on it, you know what I mean? Because it's just that tip isn't bouncing the way it's supposed to. So a lot of that just helps with knowing what is happening on the other end of that.
But we'll take out a lot of guys that fishing's not their main priority. It's to come to Newport, it's to have a good time, it's to see the sights. So that's really when I wanted the tube and worm. And then I realized, well, shoot, it actually worked. Then I realized, oh, it actually catches. My biggest fish last year, I don't know how big it was because my deck can't drop the 60-pound boga over the side, but it was a monster fish. It had to be close to 60 and was on a tube.
Same. And I resisted it. Like these two were
No, I resisted it too.
And I resisted it really hard, and then finally, you know what I mean? Can't beat them, join them. Yeah, exactly.
I might have showed somebody how to do it, and then the next week they were doing an on-the-water TV show.
I did. I'm a quick study.
Yeah.
I didn't give anything away.
Appreciated that one.
The best part about that lighter gear is it just doesn't beat up your customer, so you're not standing out there with a telephone pole. Okay, here, take this, and you're getting the crap kicked out of you, which is fun, but at the end of the day, you're like, ugh. With the better gear that we have now here at Crafty One, you fight these fish, it's ultra comfortable, you're not getting the crap kicked out of you. It's more enjoyable, I think, as a person. And I mean, for handing off rods for the last 10 years, they seem to enjoy it themselves, so.
So what's the right size, like, lead core line to use on it? BJ, you and I were talking about it. I want to do some tube and worming this year. What's the right outfit as far as reel? What's the right line?
That's Jay.
He's the guy.
So,
he's very
so I started doing the tube warm up on Cape Cod. Like that's where I grew up, and you know, Squirt and Ledge is one of the best tube warm places around. Sandy Neck Beach. I came here, you know, I don't know, 10, 12 years ago. I started fishing down here, and I looked out in front of Newport, all this rocky stuff. I'm like, oh my god, this is like a 6-mile stretch of Squirt and Ledge. I'm like, this is great. The tubes are going to work here, and they killed it. And so I love it. The way I look at it is a lot of people are like, oh yeah, tube and worming, you just throw a tube out and you catch fish. And like, no you don't. You're as a captain, you're hunting the fish. You're knowing where they are, where they stage in the tide behind certain structure. There's really a lot to it. You see a million boats that are, you know, when you come into the harbor, they've got the stupid tubes out there all stretched out, you know, and they're driving around with them and they wonder why they didn't catch things. There's some real subtleties to it once you really dial it in. You know, a couple of, not to go too deep in there, but.
No, let's go deep.
Okay, well, I mean,
Don't go deep.
I'm going to be careful here.
Yeah.
The action of the tube is the biggest thing in the world, right? Like not every tube fish is the same. And I make my own tubes. If I make 20 tubes, so I'll sit down there with my dad, we'll do a tube making session. We'll make 20, and of those 20, 3 will be absolute rock stars, 3 will suck, and the rest are somewhere in the middle. If you have a killer tube, one that just catches it, has that extra little wiggle to it, save it, keep it around. Like we on the Laura J, we mark out the good tubes and keep them separate. If you have one that's a winner, it's just, and when we're making them, it's just sometimes when you're doing the wire, some might just be a little tighter than the other, and they just have a little different action. But a lot of it is how you form that tube and how it swims through the water. And just every time before we're putting it, I'll just give you one. Every time before we put one out with the bait on it, run it next to the boat and see how that action is, and you'll get a chance to recognize that action. If it's just running straight, it's not going to catch. But if it's really corkscrewing too fast, that's probably not going to work either. But it's just recognizing what that cadence is, and that just takes time, experience to see what it is. But it's a little subtleties like that. Changing your leaders every single trip is something that we do. You see guys are like, fluorocarbon's expensive, and they've got the same piece of leader on there that they've had all year because they're like, oh, fluoro's expensive. They get this little, way too short a leader. It's all caked up with salt on it. Change it out all the time. Like every day, changing your leaders will get you more fish. Having that really clean leader.
Newport does a lot of this, and they will scrape it off.
Yep.
What size leader, what length?
That we can't answer that. Jay's helped me with that a little bit. Jay put me on a little secret part of that.
Well,
so about 7 feet a leader.
Well, longer than you think is probably good. Yeah, I would use I'd have it set up so you can wind it on. That's a big thing. Having your leader set up so it's wind on and brand new. I usually use 50 pound. You don't have to be really stealthy. I don't know if you guys go lighter now.
No, I go. Well, yeah, we a little bit.
Did you go a little lighter? I mean, I'm usually 50 for the most part. If it's really nasty, I'll lighten it up. But brand new makes a world of difference. The other thing is the really good ball bearing swivels on the end. It helps with that rotation so your line doesn't get all twisted up.
And last year the fish were deep, like deeper for me than they normally were. So now you had to be good at just dropping back and taking the boat in and out of gear. It's a total field thing. Well, I mean the fish were sitting a lot deeper than I thought. Another thing around Brenton Reef, where Robbie and I like to fish a lot. It all depends on the moon phase and the tide. So when I didn't know this years ago, it's something I learned. I was tubing along in some of these tides, and I realized I'm catching fish like this. So those are the small suspended fish that are way up top. I'm going through piles of big fish, and I'm catching little ones. I realized I wasn't even close to the bottom. Current pulling your tides. So I don't do great with weighted tubes. So I'm good friends with Charlie, and Charlie has a tube and worm book that he gave me, signed it. I never read it. I went to Portsmouth High School. I can't really read. But I tube with Charlie, and we tube nothing alike. It's so funny. So there's more than one way to do it. So there's no perfect way to tube. There's a lot of different ways. These guys, being at Block Island, a lot of times, being in that big current, I mean, it would really be hard to tube on lead core line. I think you'd have to do it more on wire line, so it'd be a totally different game. But I'm still learning. I tell you, I've been doing it for a while now, and I'm still learning how to dial it in. Because every year, I can tell you, the one thing in fishing, whatever happened last year is going to change. And I told somebody already this year, I've caught stripers on every charter in April. Never happened before in my life. I've had trips all week. We got stripers. We came around the corner with Jimmy and Robbie the other day, and they were just piled up. I had 3 striper lures on the boat, and there were big fish in there. I was shocked. I'm like, never would I thought I could do tog and striper charters in April. So it's crazy. So it changes every year. So you have to adapt, and it's going to probably be different this year. And I got to get better at tubing in the bay. I'm not that. Charlie's really good. The one thing about Charlie is I'll teach him things and he won't tell me anything. So he one day I have to find out like 3 weeks later after I brought him to a spot from somebody else that he used to fish that spot as a kid. He never told me that while we were there that day. I'm like,
so it was crazy. Like Robbie and I and Bo in the fall, we giant tuna fish and
insane.
No, it was like
this guy looked at a seagull and goes, "Hey, that seagull over there is flying to the left. We're tight." True story.
Was like bigger baits were the ticket this year.
Yeah, bigger baits definitely were, and we were throwing out baits that people generally like. That's one thing I would say with tuna fishing. The only secret I would ever give up. It doesn't matter the size of your bait, just chuck it out there. Don't be afraid.
But when no one can catch bluefish, BJ's like, all bluefish you want, just tube and worm. And I'm like, I don't have a tube, I don't have a worm, I don't even know how to do this.
So
and he's like throwing them back by the dozens, and I'm like,
this is why Robbie wanted me to get into tuna fishing so I can get him bluefish. So I had a charter one day where we couldn't really get the bass that good. And Robbie's over there going, hey, I'm going tuna fishing. my charter was so thrilled to get Robby bluefish for his tuna adventure. They wanted to know what happened that day, and they hooked up, and so we were catching. My customers were having fun. We kept them running over to Robby's boat and going on. But what I did learn, tube and worming for bluefish, 3.5 orange tubes, and one day I think I hooked on 15 bluefish, and I think we got 2 or 3 to the boat.
I was there.
Yeah. So now we thought about it after rod tip in the water the whole way. Kind of keep that bluefish from jumping off. So if you're looking for tuna baits, just don't fight the fish like this. Fight the fish down, and it kind of keeps the the bluefish from jumping off.
Don't pump the rod.
Yeah, don't pump. Although I say it all the time, and I look over Robby's customers are pumping, and he doesn't say a word. I say, don't pump, don't pump, don't pump.
They're having a good time.
Yeah, I finally took Robby's. I finally took Robby's method. I just go ahead, pump. You want to pump the rod? Go ahead.
Every time I say something, you know what happens? We end up losing fish anyway, so I just let it ride.
Yeah.
You guys are nice to me. Don't pump the rod. Don't touch the drag.
Just don't touch the drag.
Don't touch the drag.
That's one thing I cannot. Do not touch the drag. Any place you go. They got it set.
But I should have tube and wormed years ago.
Same.
I should have.
On the tube and worm, what's the right size like lead core line to use?
I like
Because
45.
I've heard everything.
I use 60.
Like I said, it's probably different.
It's preference.
Yeah.
It's what you're comfortable using, what you feel good using.
And I'm heavier than everybody else. Most of the lead that you can get is either 36 or 45. Yeah. I go and get 60 because that's how I grew up with 60. And that was when we were commercial fishing. That was, and the idea with the 60 is it's just a little bit heavier.
It's going to get lower.
It gets a little bit lower. So I'll typically fish less colors. Like I'll talk to Robby out there. And Robby might be fishing, 5, and I might only be at 3. And that's one of the other big things too, is how many colors are you fishing out there, depending on where you are. Are you into the current? Are you with the current? Where are you fishing? But you'll kind of go back and forth. And there'll be days where the fish will suspended, and we'll catch fish at 2 colors, which is, if you go by that whole slow right on the bottom, all that crap. It's like the usual, the mantra that you always hear about something like this. You got to be within 3 feet of the bottom. I don't find it to be true. There are times when they're up, and then you'll fish less colors. But that's just experimentation while you're out there.
So you're better to be high than low, because if you get weed on it, you're not fish up. So it's the fish do swim up. So
Yeah, and a lot of it you'll experiment and figure out what works for your boat, the boat speed.
Yep.
I mean, even like little things, like Jay uses worms, I use Z's. It just works better for me.
don't listen on the radio. Robby and I are on Channel 6 a lot, and everything we say is bullshit. Drop them back, Robby. Drop them back. Eight colors. Put the blue tube on. Put the blue one on. And then we look at like 3 boats and they're stuck on bottom because they dropped it back to 8 colors. So, just a joke. We go to.
You want to listen on that channel because when BJ gets upset at other boats, it is a great time. It makes my afternoon.
I'm disguising my voice now. I get a phone call from Daphne all the time. She's on the pilot boat. She's like, "Who are you yelling at now?" I'm like, "You knew that was my voice?" She's like, "Yeah." I'm like, "Shit, it's hard not to." Yeah.
Do you not think that people know who you are?
I go like this now. Hey, knock it off.
He told me the story. He was like, "Hey, remember that time when me and you was walking in the water that night?"
It was great. I told the story yesterday to my clients. It was the funniest thing. Oh,
What's the story?
you want to hear it?
Yeah.
So we're at Block Island fishing one night, and 2 boats out there.
Only
And
October.
it's in October. We're fishing the Back Eddy tournament, and we're trying to go back up on the drifts, and this boat is driving like crazy. I don't know this now. I know why, because they have the surf guy in their boat driving the boat, Baraka.
Yeah.
He's driving the boat, and I couldn't understand what they were doing. And my buddy Larry yells over to him, "Yo, asshole, what are you doing?" or something like that. And then next thing you know, it gets back and forth for quite a while. It's pitch black. I don't know it's him. He doesn't know it's me. I have no clue. And the next day, we go to the Back Eddy tournament. We're sitting down there, we're eating. He's like, "I got in an argument with his boat last night at Block." I'm like, I said, "There was only 2 of us at Block last night." Me and you. It was pretty funny. So, but that was Larry's fault.
Larry's.